Time for some more conference tournament predictions brought to you by the Full Court Trap. I got Blake Smith here with me for this one, and we're about to dive into the Big Ten. We'll be discussing all things Big Ten. Quality conference all around, lots of intriguing storylines there, seeing how Rutgers and their freshmen are going to do, looking at teams like Michigan State, Illinois, Purdue, all the top dogs in the conference. Will Michigan finally get right in the Big Ten tournament? They've been struggling a lot lately. But Blake, let's not keep the people waiting. Let's get straight into this bracket. All right, Mr. Smith, there it is, the Big Ten basketball tournament bracket in all of its glory, the 2025 edition. Games being played in Indianapolis. I think that's been the site for a number of years now over in the Big Ten. But Blake, before we dive into picking games and whatnot and seeing how our bracket lines up, what kind of storylines are we looking at heading into the Big Ten tournament? There's a lot to choose from. Like I mentioned in the intro, you got Rutgers with the star freshman. Will they be able to put together a run of play and have a respectable end to their season? I don't know if they can outright win this thing. You look at a team like Indiana on the bubble, needing to get some wins to just boost their confidence heading into Selection Sunday. And then the top-heavy portion of the bracket, Michigan State, the outright regular season champs, Illinois, a team that's resurging after being down for a while. Just when we look at this, just right off the first glance, what are you looking at as a possible storyline for this tournament that begins on Wednesday?
An Indiana-Michigan State matchup and on the 14th potentially, if they end up defeating Oregon, would be really good for college basketball. I mean, that's like a preview of a March Madness type of game. Obviously, we got to talk about Ohio State too. They're playing in the first round games of the Big Ten tournament. They've been really up and down this season, so they're trying to fight for a spot in March Madness. And that could be a big game for them to maybe boost their confidence against a USC team who's been pretty underwhelming this season. I mean, it's Muss-Bus's first season. Eric Musselman taking reign as the head coach over there at USC. So that's going to be another game I got my eyes on. Rutgers, like you said, I mean, maybe their star freshman can propel them to a deep run in this Big Ten tournament, maybe win it, and potentially lead them to March Madness after a really bad season as a team. I feel like they definitely didn't meet expectations. Purdue, a team that could go deep in March Madness, they've shown some signs of struggle down the stretch. Can they overcome those struggles and play cohesively as a team and make a deep run in this Big Ten tournament and win it? Michigan, like you mentioned, they're really front court relied on. Like, if those two bigs, Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden, aren't going off, then what's that mean for the guards? That's a big question, I feel like, going into this tournament and even the NCAA tournament. And then lastly, Maryland. I think that's a big storyline just itself. They're primed for a big run in this Big Ten tournament. They got a double bye. Their front court is unbelievably talented with Julian Reese and Derek Queen dominating basically all season. So, yeah, I definitely got my eyes on those different storylines. And
Yeah,
I forgot to mention Michigan State, too, like just themselves as a team this year, from semi-struggling down at Maui, I think it was, like for them to go from that rough start to how good they've become as a team to this day is pretty unbelievable. And Jace Richardson is blossomed into like one of the best freshmen in college basketball. So definitely a lot of storylines going into this tournament.
Yeah, 100%. I think that this might be probably the second best of the conference tournaments behind the SEC when you just talk about as a whole when it comes to the level of competition. One of my storylines is actually one that isn't even taking place in this tournament. Notably, you'll see Nebraska and Penn State. They're not here. Blake, I was about today years old on Sunday when I figured out that not all of the Big Ten teams actually get to participate in this tournament now that there's been the expansion with Oregon and USC being brought into the fold and some other teams as well, like Washington, who's also not in this.
Yeah, I feel like a bad college basketball enthusiast not knowing that. I
Yeah.
mean, it's kind of crazy that
This
just because a team is that bad, you can't make it into a conference tournament.
yeah, no,
I
this
just found out the other day too.
yeah, no, this conference expansion stuff, it's gotten hard to keep up with in ways, but yeah,
Definitely.
that was intriguing to me, just a team season coming to an end before they even get a chance to redeem themselves here. But as far as the tournament itself goes, I mean, you mentioned a lot of what I have been looking at here. Wisconsin and Michigan, I'm going to be really interested to see how they respond after having some bad runs at the end of the season there. Wisconsin got a blowout loss at home against Penn State, who, as I said, didn't even qualify for this tournament. And then Michigan, they've been having a absolutely just atrocious run of play. If it weren't for a couple of lucky just shots and bounces their way in some of those games down the stretch, they could be looking at a big losing streak right now. But
Yeah.
other than that, Illinois, you mentioned it as well. I think that they may be able to put together a run here. They're starting to look a lot better, getting healthy at the right time. But let's not waste any more time, Blake. Let's start predicting some games. We'll start with Wednesday, the opening rounds. You see it right here, Northwestern and Minnesota. Give me your winner and how this is going to work. I did this with Sully last night where there's only two of us right now. We each get one trump card. So if there's a result that we're different at, and we really want to push one team through, we can do that by default. So I don't imagine we'll be using any of those trump cards in the first round, but Northwestern Minnesota, who we got moving on in the full court traps bracket?
I think it's going to be Northwestern. These two teams faced off against each other earlier in the year, or earlier in conference play. And Nick Martinelli, he's kind of the lone guy there right now, lone star, I should say, with Brooks Barnheiser going down. It's going to be definitely a battle of the giants between Martinelli and Dawson Garcia for Minnesota. But I just think Martinelli this season has been too good. I don't think this Minnesota team's very good as a whole. I don't think Northwestern's a very good team as a whole either, but I mean they still got some competent pieces with like Ty Berry, KJ Winham coming off the bench, Luke Hunger coming off the bench, Nicholson, he's been okay this year. So yeah, they got some decent players. I definitely am taking them over
I,
Minnesota though, and that game was on the road as well. So
Yeah, I'm rolling with Northwestern as well. Not much controversy here. I think that, like you said, with Martinelli and those other guys, they're going to have just enough to at least get them a game in this tournament. Now, beyond that, I don't really know because, as we see right here, they're looking at a matchup with Wisconsin in that second round, which is going to be a tough out for them. A
yeah,
Wisconsin team that's going to be angry coming into this tournament, having gotten boat raced on their senior night. But moving on down the list of first round games, we've got Iowa and Ohio State. This is an important game for Ohio State, Blake. It's one that they need to get to feel better about themselves going into the NCAA tournament. And I would argue that maybe they need another win even beyond just their opening round to feel good about this. But do you think they get past Iowa?
yeah, I definitely do think they're gonna pull that one off. I mean, when Ohio State's clicking with Bruce Thornton, he's looked like one of the better upperclassmen guards in the country this year. John Mobley, when he's on, then he's as good as any scoring freshman in the country. They got some other good pieces on the bench as well. And then Devin Royal's been another guy who I've thought has had a really good season so far in the sophomore campaign. So give me the Ohio State Buckeyes. Iowa, they lost their best player, Owen Freeman, earlier in the year. They haven't really been the same ever since then. So, yeah, give me Ohio State. They're hungry, and I think they come out and win this game.
I also agree with you on this. I think they've got more to play for. They've still got the NCAA tournament hopes in front of them. I haven't looked at the latest bubble projections, but I would imagine they're somewhere still looking at that first four out and maybe last four in type of line. So they're going to need this game. I think they come out and get this one now. Setting up that next matchup against Illinois, I'm not too certain about that, but that's going to be an intriguing matchup when we get down the list here. But to cap off the first rounds, Rutgers versus USC. Blake, you mentioned Rutgers has the freshmen. They're looking to maybe piece together a run here and have a respectable end of their season. Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey, obviously they're electric, but the rest of that team, not so electric. So how do we
Yeah.
think they do against the Muss Bus here in the opening round? Do we think they get past Eric Musselman? Because I'll give my pick right now. I think they at least are going to get one win in this tournament.
Yeah, I agree. I think Rutgers pulls this one off. Last time these two teams played, too, it was a 10-point game. Rutgers won this. They put up 51 in the second half. It was a scoring affair between these teams. It was 95-85 last time they went against each other. It was at Rutgers, but I mean, still, it was a phenomenal game played. St. Thomas had a solid performance for USC. Wesley Yates, my bad, and Desmond Claude were unbelievable that game. And then they were going against the star-studded freshmen and Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey, who both put on a really good show. And I think that show is going to continue for at least one more day.
The show goes on. Shout out Lupe Fiasco.
Yep.
Moving on to the second rounds, we got Indiana versus Oregon. This will be on Thursday. Indiana and Oregon, this is a compelling matchup here because Oregon, they're pretty safely in the tournament field right now. They've got a decent amount of quad one victories this season. Been kind of an up and down year for them. At moments, they've shown that they can compete with the best of the best. I mean, they had a early non-conference win against Alabama all the way back in November to December-ish. I forgot when exactly that was. But Indiana, obviously, Mike Woodson's last dance as the coach. He's got to find a way into the tournament, and I think that it's going to have to take probably a win here to feel good about that. I don't really know how they fare moving into the next round where they have a potential matchup against Michigan State. But, Blake, I'm going to take Indiana here. I think that these Indiana guys, they've looked a lot more motivated and inspired ever since the news about Woodson calling it quits after the season came about. So I think they really are a team that's playing for their coach right now and wants to send him out the right way. And you can't underestimate that because when you got a group of guys that's rallying behind their coach and the guy that has believed in them and brought them there to be a part of that program, I think that this could be the spark of what gets them into the NCAA tournament so Mike Woodson can get a semi-happy ending, although this season really has not gone according to the preseason expectations.
Yeah, I'm hesitant to fully jump into an IU win, but I'm going to anyways. I mean, just like the rest of these teams so far, they've squared against each other. And Oregon ended up winning this against IU in a late season bout. I mean, it was not a super high scoring game. It was like 73-64. Something like that. It was at Oregon. This is a bit of a home game for the Hoosiers because it's being held at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, and I think it's like an hour 45, 2 hours from Bloomington. So you already know the Hoosier faithful is going to pull up for that game.
Oh, yeah.
And I just think that, like you said, since the Woodson news came out, this team's just looked a lot better. They looked more polished. Trey Galloway is playing a lot better right now. Like, he actually looks like a legit ball player. And then Mackenzie Mabako, excuse me, I think he's going to have a big breakout here in the Big Ten and look more like his old self. He's kind of fallen out of the rotation a tiny bit, I feel like, compared to what he had been. He hasn't been like the number one option as we kind of saw last year. And I do think this is a get-right spot. And I do think that these other guards for IU have to step up in this game because Jackson Shelstad is as good as any guard in the country.
Yeah, that's for sure. I'm trying to pull up. I've been looking on my phone here while you were talking Joe Lenardi's bracketology. I remember on Saturday, I believe, Indiana was in the last four in. I'm going to look right here real quick to double check. Okay, yeah. Last four in, we've got Indiana's actually a last four bye as of the most recent update. Last four in, we have Ohio State. Next four out, Nebraska. Man, tough blow for the Cornhuskers, not even being able to get a chance to try and save their season. That's kind of insane when you think about it. But, man, that's the cons of conference expansion for you right there. Not every team's going to get a chance now. But, yeah, Indiana, last four byes right now where things stand. I think that a win against Oregon, if that truly is what the committee's thinking now. Granted, this is just a Lenardi projection. He isn't in the head of the committee. But if the committee aligns with that logic, I think they get a win here. That propels them into the tournament. We're probably going to see them, I would imagine, in that last 4 spot that doesn't have to play in Dayton, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do end up in Dayton for the first 4. But that's a whole nother topic we can get to. For now, Indiana takes down Oregon in our version of this bracket. Moving on to Northwestern versus Wisconsin in the second round. Now, Northwestern, I looked at the bracketology. Besides the last 4 buys, last 4 in, first 4 out, next 4 out, Lenardi has them kind of teetering on the line of just on the outside looking in, trying to get onto that last 4 out kind of spot, just into the bubble in general. So you have to imagine that a run here to probably at least the semifinals would have to happen for them to be in the tournament picture. And I'm just going to be honest here, Blake, I don't think it's going to happen. I think Wisconsin takes care of their business if they see Northwestern. Not much more you can say than that. I just don't think there's not enough juice with this Northwestern team to pull off an upset against a hungry Wisconsin team.
No, I definitely don't think this team's going to be able to pull it off. I feel like all season long, Northwestern struggled on the road in the Big Ten, and I think this game is going to be where Northwestern comes to die this season. Their team's just too depleted right now. Like, I know Brooks Barnheiser team is just not a really good team. I know I picked them over Minnesota, but Wisconsin is a whole different beast than Minnesota. So I do think Wisconsin is just clicking way better as a team than Northwestern. John Tanji, I expect him to dominate against Northwestern's guards. And I don't think this game's going to be close at all, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that one. I don't imagine a close game here, but moving on to one of Lenardi's last 4 in teams, Ohio State, taking on Illinois in this hypothetical matchup. Now, Blake, this would be a pretty critical game for Ohio State. I think if you win this one, you feel comfortable about hearing your name called on Selection Sunday. If you don't win, I think you're looking at teams around the bubble to not perform well in the conference tournament. So this is an important one over there for Ohio State, going up against the Illinois team that at times has looked like one of the worst teams in this conference. But when they're performing at their peak, I mean, they look like a team that could have found themselves in this 1 through 4 category, maybe on the outside, like a 4 seed. But obviously the illness and the injuries plagued that team. So do we think Ohio State gets a win here that would really, really help them out on the bubble, or is Illinois going to be too much for them?
I kind of want to say Ohio State here, but I'm just going to stick with my guns and say Illinois is winning this one because I just think Illinois has too much depth right now as a team.
Yeah, this is a tough one because I could definitely see this. I think if this is the matchup we get, it will be a close game. However, I do think that Illinois is just going to have too much. Illinois is starting to play good basketball, too, at the right time. So you always got to be enthused by that. I think Brad Underwood's got to be feeling good about how they've been playing to cap out the regular season. And moving into the conference tournament, I think this is a group that could potentially pull off a stunner here against a team like Maryland and maybe find their way over to the final. But we'll talk about that here in a bit. Lastly, for the second round games, Rutgers versus Purdue. Blake, do we think that Rutgers star freshmen pull off a shocker here against Braden Smith and Purdue?
No, Rutgers stands zero chance whatsoever.
Yeah.
I was thinking about clickbaiting and saying that Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper we're going to go on a crazy run and win this, but I mean, like we saw at Mackey Arena, Rutgers had no answer at all for this Purdue team. Ace Bailey shot horrifically. Dylan Harper wasn't great that game. It was 171-2 was the final score. And Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper combined for 25. Rest of the team didn't even touch double-digit points. Tyson Acuff was regarded as like one of the top transfers in college basketball at one point. And, he was awful that game. Purdue, on the Purdue side, Fletcher Lawyer, Braden Smith, TKR, when they're on, then you're not stopping them. And I think this is just another roadblock for Rutgers because, I mean, they have no answer for those three.
Yeah, I mean, you see, I already wrote it in. I don't disagree with you here. I think Rutgers' season comes to an end. Kind of disappointing given the talent they brought in with Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper. But like I said earlier, the squad just doesn't have enough juice all around to beat a
No.
team like Purdue with Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, TKR. Now, if you get probably the worst possible game you can out of Braden Smith and you keep TKR in check, then maybe that's the route for an upset.
Yeah.
And then if you get some really flashy performances from the likes of Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey, I think they maybe could pull something off here, but I just feel like you're asking for too much in that scenario. I don't think that Braden Smith's going to come out and underwhelm in the opening round of this tournament. So
No.
I'm taking Purdue here. Blake, as a whole, right now, as we head into the quarterfinal rounds, looking a little bit chalky on the whole, but hey, I mean, sometimes that's the way it goes. Since we've gone all chalk, that probably means that this bracket's going to go into absolute chaos as the week
Yep.
goes on. But hey, these are
Literally
just
right before our eyes. It's just gonna
yeah.
poof.
This will probably we're going to see like a team like Northwestern somehow find their way over here or whatever. That's just what March is all about. But I feel like this is the realistic expectation for what to look for as we head into the quarters. So let's get started here with our quarterfinal matchup between Indiana and Michigan State. Blake, does Indiana pull off the shocker that would pretty much lock up a tournament berth for them? I would imagine.
No, and here's why. Two words for you. Hold on. I gotta get my teams up. Jace Richardson.
Yep.
I've never seen him miss a shot when I'm actually watching one of their games. Obviously, the stat sheet, the box scores, the game logs, all that. His stats show that he's not 100% field goal shooter, 3-point shooter. But I mean, literally every time I've tuned in, I've watched like 3 or 4 games of his this season. I don't recall him missing. Like, the kid is an absolute bucket. Jeremy Fears is one of, like, he's a legit leader on the team. Trey Holloman has been performing really well for that Michigan State team. Jackson Kohler's breakout this season has been super unexpected, I think. Like, when he was in high school, he was a, like, fringe 4-star, like a really low 4-star. Played with Bronny James on Strive for Greatness, but I don't really remember him being as good as he's been this season.
Mm-hmm.
The only, like, negative I have about this team is Xavier Booker, and it's not even really a negative. It's just more so like wanting him to step up as a guy who's in their second year, has all the potential in the world to be a legit player, and he just hasn't really had things click. I mean, going against a team in his home state, IU, this could definitely be a game where, like, he's like, hey, like, maybe this is the one where it clicks and I go off, and maybe that could spark like a big tourney run for him of good performances. But we'll see. I do think Michigan State wins this one, though.
I want to go with the storyline pick so bad and say Indiana gets it done, but I'm not going to. I like this Michigan State team too much. I mean, you summed up basically all my thoughts perfectly. Jace Richardson, walking bucket, that team all around, they're just so well rounded. Trey Hallman is a stud at the guard spot. You've got a freak athlete with Cohen Carr. I mean, I've been posting his highlights damn near every week on the trap. He's always doing something crazy when it comes to dunking or making plays on defense.
Mr. Highlight Reel.
Yeah, Mr. Highlight Reel. You got a guy like Jaden Akins makes big time shots when his team needs them, and then you got Tom Izzo, who's one of the better coaches in the sport. I had some takes on him going into this year about him being a little bit underwhelming on the whole, but he's met all of those critics' claims this season, and he took this team from unranked and looking like garbage, to be quite honest with you, in the Champions Classic, to I think it's not even crazy to say they're a national title contender where things are right now. I mean, you may not agree with me, Blake, but I think this team is more than capable of bringing home a banner to East Lansing.
Yeah, I don't know. They probably do have national championship type of ceiling.
I would say
they go out in like the Elite Eight, Final Four. Like, I just think there's some point that they're going to come to a halt, and some team's going to catch them slipping. Because if Jace Richardson isn't like explosive from the field like he's been, then this team is capable of like dropping a game like that. And when you're talking about going against some of the best and the best, or best of the best in college basketball, you're more than likely to drop a game like that.
Yeah, I mean, if things click the right way, and obviously March Madness is very matchup dependent, I could
Hmm.
easily see them finding their way into a Final Four, maybe national title spot, because they have that kind of talent. But I mean, the field also, as well, you have to consider we have a really, really great field of 68 teams that we're going to be having in this tournament. So I think that Izzo's done a phenomenal job this year. Regular season outright champions, and they're going to move on here. I think they're a pretty safe bet for the final, but we'll get more into that here as we go along. Moving on to the next matchup of the quarters, Wisconsin versus UCLA. This is an intriguing one, Blake, because Wisconsin, they obviously are lower seeded in this matchup, but I do think that they're a better team than UCLA. They just dropped some games that they really, quite frankly, shouldn't have lately down the stretch. And if I'm picking right now, I'm going with Wisconsin. I think John Tonji, he's going to have a good performance and shine when the lights are brightest over there in Indy. He's going to be able to get them a game or two in this tournament, and I think it starts here with a win against UCLA.
Yeah, I think Wisconsin wins this one too. The last time these two teams squared off, UCLA actually ended up pulling it off. It was a road game for Wisconsin though, and Ade Mara had like literally probably his biggest performance of his career. I think it was his career high. He had like I think 22 on like 7 of 7 from the field. And they made him the centerpiece of that offense that game. And Wisconsin, like how we've talked about a few times on this podcast, their front court really isn't anything to like stop and like recognize and be like
And
super passionate about because I
leaves a
mean
lot to be desired.
let's just face it, that front court's not that great. They're really guard lenient, and I mean UCLA could pick them off if like guys like Eric Daly, Tyler Bilodeau, and Ade Mara have good games. But I just think that John Tonji has too much experience and has been too big of a key factor in that offense all year for them to go out like that in the Big Ten tournament that early.
Yeah, I think if you're UCLA, you really want to expose the front court with Tyler Bilodeau and get him rolling. And if he gets on a
Yeah.
heater and has a really good performance, they could pull it off there. But I still like this Wisconsin team, even though they've been massively underperforming. I think they could have easily taken over this 4 spot from UCLA here had they had handled their business in some spots. But that's another conversation for another day. Now, this matchup really intrigues me. This is the first one that we've looked at that I really think is going to be a quality matchup if we get it. That'll be Illinois versus Maryland in the quarterfinals. Now, Blake, Maryland is a team that I think could go on to win this entire tournament. But at the same time, I think this is a really rough draw for them getting Illinois in their first game.
Yeah, I think that is definitely a rough draw, but I just think that Julian Reese and Derek Queen are too good right now. Like they're clicking at the right time. Illinois lost Mariz Johnson. I mean, Illinois has been okay recently compared to what they were last month, where they're going through the sickness or the plague, basically. Illinois did just pick off Purdue. They picked off Michigan in a pretty big of a blowout game. Like since that Duke game where they got absolutely embarrassed, they've been playing really well. But uh, I just think Illinois is not going to win this one. I think Maryland's too good.
This is such a tough one. God, I don't know who to pick here because I really like Maryland. I do think they could go on a run here. But Illinois, man, I mean, they've got 2 back-to-back wins against ranked opponents with Michigan and Purdue. I like the way they're playing right now. Kasparis Yakachonis, he's a stud. And then Tomislav Ivicic, you got Kylan Boswell, man, in the floor general spot there. Ben Humikaris, too, at the big man spot. Ugh, this is so tough. This is going to be one we're going to disagree with, Blake. I've got Illinois moving on. Now, this is where the trump card comes into play. Do you want to force Maryland through, or are you going to let me have my pick of Illinois here? The ball is in your court.
You can go ahead and put Illinois there.
You sure you don't want to send Maryland through?
Put Illinois there with an asterisk.
Okay. Well, for the viewers at home, Blake has Maryland going through here. For the sake of the podcast, we're going to send Illinois through because I like the storyline there with them possibly making noise after being underwhelming. But Maryland, like I said, I could easily see them taking care of business against Illinois and possibly winning this whole thing. I just think that's a tough draw for them when you got an Illinois team that's been playing pretty good basketball these last couple of games. But moving on to the last quarterfinal matchup, Purdue and Michigan. Blake, I'll go ahead and spoil my prediction right now for you. Purdue, I think they win. They've got the better backcourt with Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer. Michigan, their backcourt has really been a question all season long. Now, the front court with Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden, I think they have Purdue beat, where Purdue really only has TKR to throw at them. But I'm going with the Boilermakers here. Now, if you want to go against me and take Michigan, you get to send them through since you let me have my battle one in the last one.
I'm taking Michigan by 30.
Okay.
I'm kidding.
30.
Happy early April Fools, guys. We're going Purdue here.
Okay.
Purdue.
Purdue. Okay. I thought you were serious.
No, we're pulling out the engagement bait for you guys.
Purdue
Eddie Link style.
Oh, God. Well, I'm going to move on from that reference. Gosh, okay. Purdue, the 6th seed, getting the upset against Michigan. So I guess looking at the game specifically, Blake, what do we like about Purdue here? I mean, obviously I mentioned the battle of the backcourt. I think they've got Michigan beat. The front court, Michigan can really look to expose. But other than that, I mean, what makes us like Purdue in this matchup?
I mean, these two teams split during the season. When they went to Mackey Arena, the game was a 30-plus win for Purdue. It was 91-64. Wait, my math ain't math. And that was like a 27-point win, 26, something along those lines. But I just think that Purdue's going to have literally every Boilermaker fan possible in attendance for that game. And Braden Smith, like I've said a gazillion times on this podcast, Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, TKR together, clicking in the same game is a dangerous team. And if CJ Cox can come alive in this game, which, to be honest with you, I think he can, just because of how, I don't want to say weak the Michigan guards are, because Namari Burnett, Trey Donaldson, those guys have been serviceable this year. But I do think CJ Cox can have a big game here, and I don't think this game's solely going to be based on the big three having a big performance. I do think other guys are going to step up in this moment, and I think Purdue does pull this one off.
All right, so that moves us into the semifinals. The first one, Michigan State versus Wisconsin, the Full Court Trap's first semifinal in the Big Ten. Blake, who do we got? I think that I know who I'm going with, but I'll let you do the honors first.
Party. Let's ride. We're going Michigan State. Come on.
Yep, Michigan State. That's my pick.
I'm not even going into detail about it. Just Michigan State.
I just like them too much. I think they're overall a lot deeper than Wisconsin, and I just think that overall that matchup really favors them. But Wisconsin, I mean, if you get a win against UCLA and go down to the outright regular season champion, nothing to be ashamed of as you head into tournament play. Now, here we have Illinois versus Purdue. Now, I will add a little disclaimer here. Blake's pick was Maryland, so for the sake of just having our thoughts all out there, I'll put Blake's pick above. But in this matchup, Blake, Illinois versus Purdue, what do we think if this is the semifinal we get for the second one in the Big Ten?
I'm not going to lie to you. Whether it's Illinois or Maryland, I think this is a game that Purdue's going to drop. It's going to probably piss some Purdue fans off. I'm sorry if I upset you with this one, but I think that Purdue's just bound to drop a game here. I don't really see them in the championship of the Big Ten. It's nothing to be upset about. I mean, the top of the Big Ten is just super deep. It's not anything to be ashamed of going down in this game. I just think that Purdue, like I just said, is likely to drop a game here.
Okay, so this puts us in a complicated situation. So I think no, actually, I was going to go Purdue. I think Illinois does it. I think their run to the final gets there. However, you would have Maryland in this situation. So for the sake of the bracket, I'm taking Illinois to move on. Let me get my colors right here. Just tweaking out. Okay, there we go. Illinois, that is my final pick. Blake's final pick is Maryland. I'll make a little note of that while we talk about our hypothetical final matchup. So, Blake, with the teams we have in mind, Michigan State versus Illinois, we'll keep it to that for the sake of just the video. Who gets it done in that matchup?
I mean, Michigan State did sweep during the regular season. So, I mean, if we're going with the logic of it's hard to beat a team 3 times, then, hey, not Wolverines, Fighting Illinois. You guys got this one.
Oh, you're taking Illinois if it gets to this.
Yep. I mean, if Illinois
I guess
goes,
technically you'd be taking Maryland, but I see what you're saying.
If Illinois goes that far, then I just think they got too much to lose. I think they're gonna ride or die for their team. I think they're gonna come out big with the performance here in the championship of the Big Ten. If it's Maryland, I mean, it kind of goes along with that. I don't think they I don't even know if they played each other twice this season. Yeah, they did. I just don't remember. I think they split it, to be honest with you. Michigan State, Maryland, but give me Maryland in that case. Or actually, if Maryland makes it, give me Michigan State. If Illinois makes it, give me Illinois.
Okay. So for the sake of this bracket, we are going to crown. Who used the last trump card? Was that me or you?
Well, it's supposed to be me, but I didn't use it.
Okay, yeah. I am going to take – this is a tough one. I see your logic.
State.
I see your logic with Illinois not being beat 3 times.
Bait.
But at the same time, give me the Spartans. The Spartans are winning the Big Ten. That's what I'm going with here. Sparty party. The Spartans,
yeah, I mean.
Spartans are moving on to the automatic bid. Obviously, they don't really need it, but they just complete the championship run here. They get the outright regular season. I'm having some spelling issues here. My mic's in the way. Live production here, folks. Don't blame me. But, yeah, the Spartans are champions of the Big Ten. Blake, I like this bracket that we've cooked up together. What do you think?
Can you hear the music?
I cannot.
Fuck!
What's the music?
Celebrate good times.
Oh, yeah.
Spartans. By cooling the game. We're celebrating.
Yeah.
What do I think about the bracket, though? I think this is bound to crash and burn just because everything I touch prediction-wise is bound to crash and burn. I'm probably 2 for 75 this year with my predictions. I think the most notable has been Solo Ball being a breakout player. There was some Kentucky win, too, that I thought was – who was it? Or what game was that? I was the only one to say
I'm trying to think. You're talking about a game Kentucky won or they lost?
Lost. I think it was lost.
You picked Missouri on the last pod.
I know. There's one I predicted right, though. I mean, I said they were going to lose, and I was like, okay, but whatever. And we'll talk about that later. But yeah, I've been pretty bad with predictions, so I expect this to not go as well.
Hey, that's what March is all about. Brackets are meant to be busted, but the Full Court Trap Pod, Tom Izzo, you are our champion of the Big Ten Conference Tournament. Congratulations, completing the outright regular season title and then going into Indianapolis and winning the conference tournament title. Hell of a year for Michigan State if this comes to fruition, and I really do want to see Illinois make a run because I think that would be a nice storyline for a team that's really struggled with a lot of external factors. But really, I think if I had to pick 3 teams out of here that would be my best bets to take it home, I think we got it right here with Maryland, Illinois, and Michigan State. But yeah, that's another bracket preview in the books for the Full Court Trap Pod. Michigan State Spartans, the Full Court Trap Pod's Big Ten champion.